What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Jacked Ramsays. Sorry, a little delay there. My dogs decided they wanted to bark right as I was ready to fire this thing off, so my wife isn't here right now, so I had to go calm them down. So there we go. Welcome into Jacked Ramsays. It's been a while. Sorry if you haven't been paying attention to the radio show. My former co-host is now my boss, so I've been dealing with that. A lot of stuff that kind of comes with that, and just general trying to get my chickens, my mentals all in line. So appreciate you all bearing with me. Got a metric crap ton of questions from you. I think there's like 30 that came in. Actually, 30 on the dot. There we go. I'll try to get to as many of these as I can. I've got a mock draft that I'll probably publish tonight or tomorrow morning at the very latest. Some draft intel stuff. Guys I like. I do this every year. The guys I like. Part of this over on the Patreon. Patreon.com/Jacked Ramsays. I'm going to, honestly, I've got stuff that's been sitting there for 2 weeks now, and I'm just going to push publish on it. So, and I've got a couple other things that I'm working on this week now that I've got a little bit more time. So, we getting feedback? Let's try that. I love it when my settings completely reset. It's super fun. We good now? We good? Anybody? Bueller? Hopefully that fixed it. So, without further ado, I'm just going to answer these questions. I was going to write them down, but I decided I would answer them just kind of in order. From Maz Northwest, Chris Mazzio. Trey Murphy, worth pursuing if you have to give up 11. I like Trey. I think he's a really good player. The problem is the New Orleans Pelicans really like Trey. If you're aware of how the Utah Jazz view Walker Kessler, that's how I think the Pelicans view Trey Murphy. He may not be the piece, but he's a very important and integral part of what they want to do. So I think particularly after the Desmond Bane trade, that's going to cost you a lot. And I don't know if the Blazers are in a position yet to give up that much capital to go get somebody, Trey or anyone, to be honest, Trey Murphy, as good as Trey is. So at least that's my view of this. Now, there's certainly other teams that are probably further along in the process that might look down that and go, that's something we can afford, much like Orlando did with Memphis, and give up a lot of capital because they, particularly if you're in the Eastern Conference, you're looking around and you're going, yeah, we can swing this. We can make this happen. I just have a reeling suspicion that the freight to get Trey Murphy would be pretty damn significant. So, Lance Lewis, is there a feasible path to finally having a balanced roster, or are they just going to run it back and hope for the best? The roster seems long overdue for a bit of a shakeup of some sort with vastly different opinions on what that looks like. I don't think they're going to run it back. I do think you will see some movement. I don't think it's going to be all of the movement people want. Gun to my head, I think they'll find a way to trade Jeremy. I could be wrong. I do think that there is a path there. I've seen some reporting that the Blazers are going to have to, reporting, air quotes, the Blazers are going to have to attach draft capital to move Jeremy Grant. I don't believe the Blazers would do that. So, now what the return may or may not be, I don't think you're looking at anything incredible. But I don't believe that they're going to just swap money for money and include draft capital just to get off Jeremy's deal. I just don't. The Blazers are, like we mentioned with Trey Murphy, they're not at a point where giving up assets really makes a ton of sense, and giving up an asset just to move off a contract, I don't think there's any world that exists right now, because they're not in a spot where being that competitive demands that of them. Now, if they make a leap forward going in the next year and somehow Jeremy's still on the roster, then that's probably something you have to consider. But I don't think that that's something that's on the horizon either way. So, but as far as getting a balanced roster, it kind of depends on what you mean. Because at every single position, point guard, Scoot, Shaden at the 2, 2 at the 3, Denny at the 4, Donovan at the 5, and then you throw in Roops and Chris. Like, there's a young guy literally at every single position. And if they use their draft pick at 11, they're throwing in another young guy. Whether it's Carter Bryant or Noa Essengue or Egor Demin or Kasparas Jakucionis. Like, you're adding either another guard, or even if it's a big guard, which both those guys are, or wings, you're still adding a body to a spot that has younger reinforcements at every single position. And then at the center spot, you've got DA ahead of Klingon still. You still have Rob. You still got WAP. Like, there's depth everywhere. And now there's varying levels of depth, but I think this is a make or break year kind of, and I've hinted at this on the radio a ton, with particularly for Scoot and Shaden, where it's going to be a situation, at least for me, where you get into camp and I've used this analogy a bunch of times now. I'm sure people are getting tired of it. And you go full Heath Ledger Joker and you break up the pool stick and you go, we got an opening, figure it out. And you toss it in the room and whoever comes out, comes out. That's at least the way I would see it. I don't want a guy who wants to be gifted a starting spot. I want a guy who's like, I earned this. Whether that's Scoot, whether that's Shaden, whether that's Two. Two went through this last year. Denny even. You look at that, and I think balanced roster, I'm not exactly sure what you're trying to get at with regards to that. If you mean that there's clearer path for the young guys, they got to be good enough. Like, Two just snatched that position. Denny just snatched that position. I don't think Donovan's done that. I don't think Scoot's done that. I don't think Shaden's done that. There's plenty of opportunity. There's a couple months between now and training camp. We'll see if one of those guys can do it. But it'll be interesting to see what that looks like between now and through the transaction period. And I say that in the immediate transaction period, with the draft now a week and a night away, and then free agency a week after that, the free agency period at least, moratorium opening up. And I think that week basically between the draft, or starting the first night of the draft and then going into free agency, is going to be pretty busy, not just for the Blazers, but the league in general. So that's pretty impressive. Kenny Whitney, does it seem like Egor Demin has a great feel as a passer, but zero feel as a scorer? Great feel as a passer. He's probably the best passer in the draft. I don't think he has zero feel as a scorer. Let me pull up his... I thought I had this up, but I didn't. Where is my Synergy account? I wanted to pull up his usage and efficiency. Not NBA, I want college men. Nice thing I have a name named Egor, or Yegor. There's not a lot of you in college basketball. So if I look at play types for him, as a pick and roll ball handler, he was in the 98th percentile as a pick and roll ball handler, 192 possessions per Synergy. Now, that doesn't mean he only ran 192 pick and rolls as a primary ball handler, but he did it basically more than anyone else. He came out in the 57th percentile in points per possession rank, which gives them a good rating. 45% field goal percentage, 51.2 effective field goal percentage as the pick and roll ball handler. His isolation possessions were very low. 20 total possessions where either a shot, turnover, foul, some event occurred off that. That's how Synergy qualifies it. It doesn't count every single isolation and kick out. It's when an event triggers. So very, very, very low isolation, very, very, very low cut numbers. His spot up numbers were pretty low, 29th percentile, 98 total possessions. His points per possession ranked in the 26th percentile. Only shot 30.8% from the field, 41.2% effective field goal percentage. So, and again, the other part of this is turnover rate. He had a 26% turnover rate, 26% turnover percentage in the pick and roll. I think a big part of that is adjusting to the college game. Coming over from overseas, that's probably an adjustment. Another part of it is young kid, but that's also the scary factor. He's a 6'8" plus ball handler, and you wonder, can he get to a spot? Can he turn a corner? And I think some of the same questions are there for Kasparas, but I think Kasparas' profiles at least as a better shooter, at least for me. I'm also probably a little bit biased there because I spent a week with Kasparas last year at Hoop Summit, and he was a guy, if you go back and read the tweets from back then, Kasparas was a guy that stood out a ton to me. And I'm like, that's an NBA guy. There's just something about him that I really like that just reminds me of a organizer, floor general type. There's just something there that I really like about him. But I don't think he has zero feel as a scorer. I just think he's like if you're talking about the slider, scorer versus playmaker, he's significantly over to the playmaker part. He's not Tyrese Halliburton, but I'm going to use Hallie as an example where Hallie's probably like first 4 options or as a creator before he wants to score. But Hallie's very capable as a scorer, but he also developed a little bit longer, got a few more shots up. So it's an interesting thing, but I don't think zero feel as a scorer. I've seen those guys before, and those guys scared the living crap out of me. Big Hoff, could we make a big trade as early as midseason with Ayton's contract and picks and young players? If you're talking about like at the trade deadline, it would depend on the path the Blazers are on. If like they're sitting somehow 5, 6, 7, I don't think that's going to be the case. But say they're sitting 5, 6, 7. And the market has shifted, and there's teams out there that are desperate for center help, and they're looking for an expiring contract. There's a lot of things that have to line up, right? And again, I think DA is probably a slightly above average starting center in the NBA when you just kind of go through and rank him. His numbers have dipped drastically, and I think a big part of that is he's so reliant on guys to set him up, which is why playing with Chris Paul made him so good. I mean, that's why playing with Chris Paul makes anybody good. Look at every big that Chris Paul has ever played with. And, remember DeAndre Jordan being God? Yeah, that happened. But it would be interesting. So then we'll dive more into the expiring guys here in a little bit, because I saw a couple questions about the expirings. But there's better than a 0% chance that is the case. But I think it would be because they would have a ton of indicators that they are heading down the path, and it's like, it's not necessarily accelerating it. It's going, hey, let's get somebody in that makes sense right now so that we get a little bit of time with them going into next season, and we kind of have a better understanding. That's ultimately kind of where I fall on that. Jonathan, with Indiana in the finals and not having a top 5 superstar, do you find this encouraging for Blazers fan? Does this change your perspective of the Blazers? I've talked to people in the league since the finals started, and there's a general belief in the NBA that this is more than just a one-off. That the Big Three era, because of this current CBA, and if you've listened to the radio, I'm a firm believer that CBAs can define eras, and I think that this is going to be one of those ones where we're going to see a lot of transitive properties pop up for teams, and they're going to have very, very, very short windows, because if you do like what Orlando has just done, trading for Desmond Bane, they're loading for bear for the next 2 years. But after that, they're going to get punched in the face as it pertains to the financial ramifications, and one of Suggs, Bane, Franz, Paolo is going to have to go. You're seeing this happen with Boston. Like, they are looking to move either KP or Drew. But there was also some reporting the other day that they're not shopping Jaylen Brown, but because KP's health and the stuff that he's gone through and Drew's age and both those guys' contracts, they're having to at least consider offers for Jaylen Brown. And so you can have 2, no doubt, core dudes. A third, if you're lucky and you've got a guy on a rookie scale or a really good deal like a Denny. Like if Denny's your second or third best player on his current contract, you're golden. Right? That's why a guy like Denny becomes so valuable in the CBA. But I do believe we are away from, you have to have 3 absolute dudes. I know I say this as OKC sitting there with 2 surefire dudes, and Chet, who has a metric kind of potential, but he's such a unique player. He could certainly impact the games without scoring, even though he struggled last night from the field. Like, I don't think anybody's looking at him like, Chet's not good enough. Like, they have a 3-2 lead in the NBA Finals. So, and again, OKC's a different case because of how young they are, where their contracts are, how many draft picks they have. They're, again, I hate using the phrase unicorn, but like they're kind of a unicorn franchise with teams like San Antonio, Houston, Utah being behind them when you talk about how young they can be and how much draft capital they have kind of going forward. But I do think that there is a pivot, and it's I've talked about this kind of a ton on the radio, but I guess this is probably a good a place as any to go into it. The strongest link versus weakest link, and the probably last 40 years, like I'm 40, like my lifetime, the NBA has been defined by the strongest link. If you have the absolute best player, hell, the first and third or first and fourth best player in a series, if that one guy is a top 5 guy, you're probably going to win the series. Like the only times it doesn't pop up is like when LeBron was coming out of the East and was just running up against it. But they were there every single year. Like, and again, I'm talking about LeBron. I'm talking about the second time in Cleveland. And at that point in time, they've added Kevin Love, and that iteration still was right there. But they went up against a buzzsaw that had 4 first ballot Hall of Famers, plus a supporting cast that we'll probably never see again. But I do think it's encouraging, not just for Blazers fans, but I think of any team, because this is probably as close as we're getting to some sort of parity in like the NFL, where it's very, very hard. Like you look at the Chiefs, or you look at the Bills, and you look at the teams that are just there regularly. They got their quarterback, and then they've got their dude one place or another, depending on which team. With the Chiefs, it's Kelsey, it's Chris Jones, it's Patrick Mahomes. With the Bills, it's Josh Allen and, insert pass rusher here, whether it was Stephon Diggs on the outside. Like, there's just a number of dudes that you look at and you go, okay, yeah, but we need to figure everything else out. And you can kind of cycle through that. But if you have the impact guys, obviously the NBA and NFL are very different, but I think they're not mirroring each other, but mimicking in a fashion that's reminiscent of that. This is from Rob the Blaze. I want to get your opinion on some of the mid to late lottery prospects. Malawach, Fears, Bryant, Kasparas, Demin. What guys on our range are you highest on? Based on the intel that I've got, Malawach won't make it past 8. I'm not a big Malawach guy. I know there's plenty of people that are. He's enormous. When he was at Hoop Summit here, I was just like, good God, that kid is huge. Moves relatively well for his size. His hands aren't the best, but he also has maybe the softest shooting touch of anyone that big I've ever seen. Now, that's not necessarily translating to shooting effectiveness, but the ball, shout out Dave Dufour. I love him for this. He there's some guys that just shoot a softball. Like Steph shoots a softball. Ant and Dame don't really shoot like a softball. It almost like kind of fires out of their hands. But like when Steph shoots, it looks like a feather leaving his hand. It's kind of weird. Like Clay doesn't really even have that. There's just not a lot of guys that have that super soft shot, even on like something when a guy who's got to release the Ray Allen, soft looking jumper, even though it was lightning quick. And typically guys that are big definitely don't shoot that soft. They just don't have that kind of touch. So I understand if you're like, okay, this guy's really big. He's got a really soft shot. His ability to alter shots at the rim, be an anchor for a defense. Like if that's the way you're projecting him, I understand that. I'm just not a believer in the highest level outcomes for him. Not to say that Donovan's better, but I think I believe more in Donovan's strengths than I do in Malawach's, if that makes sense. Fears is a guy that's going to be really interesting. He's either going to be a guy who goes 5, 6, 7, 8, or he's going to fall out of that into the back of the lottery. And that's what's really interesting about him. I like him. I don't necessarily think that's the guard the Blazers are looking at. I could be wrong. But I look at Fears, and there's something about him where I just go, I don't see him as a Blazers guard. I don't know why. There's when I watch him play, when I watch his tape, I was like, no, not it. Carter Bryant. Carter Bryant is a guy that I've seen mocked to Portland and from various places. He's a guy that's getting a lot of love as we get closer to the NBA draft. I think the earliest he'll probably look at going, and this depends on trades, Utah, Washington, New Orleans, Brooklyn, Toronto, basically 5 through 9. I've heard in trade discussions about moving around. And that could change a lot of things. Like as it stands right now, Coop's going 1, Dylan's going 2. I'm getting not more certain, but it does feel like VJ Edgecombe is gonna go 3. After that, I think Colin will probably go 4. I think. That's at least what it sounds like. Colin has some big supporters in the league. And Charlotte being at 4. Remember, Charlotte has engaged with the Trailblazers and other teams every draft the last couple of years with Peterson in charge. When the Hornets were picking in front of the Blazers and Miller and Scoot, the Hornets called the Blazers about, hey, do you want to trade up? And I know a couple other teams did as well. Last year, the Hornets had both the Grizzlies and the Blazers on the phone when they were picking 6th, and both teams were looking at Donovan Clingan. So it's just something to consider there, at least. Kasparas is a guy that I love. Look, I know I've got probably, like I mentioned, I've got some bias towards him. I love his size. I love his strength. I love that he gets to the free throw line like a bat out of hell. Let me go ahead and pull, since I've got everything up here, let's go ahead and pull up Kasparas. All right, so looking at Kasparas, again, these are all the numbers per synergy. As a pick-and-roll ball handler, he had 203 possessions, which is even more than Egor, ranked in the 94th percentile, 0.759 or average points per possession ranking. And a lot of that stems from a shooting slump that happened. He did have some injuries, and he shot, as a pick-and-roll ball handler, shot 26% from 3. On spot-ups, he shot 31%. Transition, 41%. Isolation, 35%. Off handoffs, 39%. And if you look at it just as shot-type data, come on. On jumpers, he shot 32.5%. 35% on catch and shoot. Guarded 31, unguarded 39. And then shot 65% at the rim, which... That you can work with that. His points per possession at the rim, 1.29, which is solid. He dealt with some stuff at Illinois, injuries, illnesses, rotations, changes. Context matters, but I always try to be careful of giving a guy too much of an excuse. I'm just going off of intrinsic feel. For whatever that's worth. When I watch him, I watch a guy that I trust. I don't know why. I just do. I honestly get the same from Carter Bryant. Even though he came off the bench for Arizona, he just shows up in so many big plays. Defensively, being in the right place at the right time, being disruptive. There's the way that those guys move, their feel, their IQ. They're not thinking about things in the sense of like reaction, they're anticipating. Not always, because most young guys, like a guy like Cooper Flagg, like anticipates all the time. That's why he makes out of this world plays regularly. That's why he's going to be the number 1 pick. It's not just the skill and the athleticism. His processing and his work ethic are insane. I've mentioned this before. I've never, I've been 15 years of doing this. I've never seen a kid that young be that advanced mentally, emotionally, feel, IQ. If he doesn't turn into something special, it will be a massive shock to me. And I don't like heaping those kind of expectations on a guy, and Wemby's a different category because he's a mutant physically. But those kind of guys, they don't come across often where it's this perfect match of skill, talent, athleticism, size, IQ, feel, maturity. Just, he's a pro. And he's the youngest guy in the draft. I almost said second youngest. Essengue is the second youngest. But the guys that I'm highest on at 11, Kasparas and Carter are probably 1 and 2. And you could toss a coin, and it would depend on the day about where I put those guys. I see the appeal of Egor. 6'8+, barefoot. Like if he does turn into the thing, 6'9" point guard is, that's a pretty juicy little thing to have. That's a nice little wrinkle. But you're betting on upside, I think, significantly more than you are. I think the floor is for Bryant and Kasparas is like useful role players. Like I think Kasparas at worst is probably a backup point guard off the bench. Being 6'6", being strong, getting to the free throw line, having passing versatility, live dribble, either hand, craft around the rim, good footwork. Like, yeah, I'm confident at like those guys are NBA players. So, Keegan Spen loves it. Are there any players you're higher on than consensus, lower on? Feels like there's so many ways the Blazers go with the 11th pick, and I could talk myself into a number of them. All right. I closed a bunch of tabs because excuse me, because I'm a dummy. Let me pull these back up. So I'm going to use ESPN as the mock. Harper, Flag, no issue. Edgecombe, no issue. Kahn, no issue. Trey Johnson. Now, Trey's not divisive, but again, context matters. Playing at Texas, the system was not great. His relationship with his point guard, I don't think was great. I don't think he was put in a position to truly succeed, but he can shoot the ever-living hell out of the ball. And that's just, look, man, it's to me, the primary commodity in basketball is can you create an advantage and can you play make? And if you can shoot like that, you can create some advantages. Now, can he play make? I don't know. I also worry about his size a little bit unless he's playing the 1. I think at the 2, I don't know. His frame isn't really that big. He's got a long wingspan, but I don't know how big he gets. He weighed in at $190, so he's decent. Right now, he's basically a little bit smaller than Ant. Can he put on 20 pounds and still be effective? Like get closer probably to Gary Trent Jr.? Get a little bigger, a little more stout, a little bit better at the point of attack. But I'm probably not as high on him as others. Just because I think the path for him for being great is a little more limited. Ace Bailey at number 6. If you've listened to me at all over the last draft cycle, I have had questions about Ace a ton. Number one, when everybody's talking about he's 6'10", he's 6'10", I was like, I don't know if he is. He measured 6'7.5" barefoot. So he's playing at 6'8 plus, 6'9". Not a huge deal, but not as big as everybody thought. I watched him play up close and personal at Oregon. And the basketball is the basketball. I don't think those guys took it seriously, and I think Dana Altman was the devil to them, and I mean that in the most complimentary fashion to Coach Altman. They threw every single defense at them imaginable and was disruptive as hell. He went on, they played Washington, I think, after that, and I think they both, Dylan and Ace, both had like 30. Washington, not good. Oregon, much better. But he is a guy, the reporting's out now, that has been falling. That's something that's been happening kind of behind the scenes. The intel on him has not been great. I think there are some maturity questions. I don't think it's anything toxic or teams are like, oh, God. But there are teams that do not like him. Like they question his feel, his basketball IQ, and his maturity. And if you're talking about making a guy, a franchise cornerstone, those last two are big deals. And I'm just not an Ace guy. And then again, maybe that's my own bias. And again, spending a week with him and around him, it's not a bad kid. He's a happy-go-lucky, jovial, joking kid. But I think that's part of the problem is I don't think he takes it serious enough yet. Like when you contrast him with a guy like Cooper Flagg, and it's not necessarily fair to be held up to a guy who could be a generational talent, but that's what you're talking about. Like you're when you're picking in the top 5, top 6, top 7 picks, like, those are the questions you really start asking. You're not really taking flyers yet. I don't think Ace goes in the top 5 unless somebody trades up because they really want him. And there are some teams that really do like him. But I wonder how many teams really love him and are willing to go above 6 to get him. That's another one. Jeremiah Fears, again, I'm probably okay with him at 7. If he fell to Portland, I think you definitely take a look, but he's a smaller guard that's like, yeah, but he can shoot it, and it's like, I don't know, man. I'm probably good with him at 7. I'm probably not higher or lower on him than that. I think the 7 through 11 range is totally fine. Again, Malach, we already talked about. Essengue is really interesting. So the Blazers scheduled Ratio Farm the German team that Essengue and Ben Saroff both play for. I got to see him in person, and the measurements came out this weekend. He's grown an inch and put on like 10 or 15 pounds, something like that. I think he's grown an inch and a half and put on 10 or 15 pounds. He came in at 6'10", barefoot with a 7-foot slightly plus wingspan. I thought his arms were longer. Again, it's not a huge deal, but looking at him, he just looked rangier. But 6'10" forward who like just somehow produces is interesting because he plays in the Bundesliga. Shout out the BBL. The competition is a little It's not like playing in Spain. So that's a little iffier. If you're really convicted on him, if your draft analytics like, yeah, no, he's this now, but he could really be something, you could convince me that it makes sense. And he's the guy that I've heard is going to be the disruptor in the draft. Essengue is the guy that is not on everybody's top 10 that a few teams like between basically 6 and 10 that could end up being a guy that jumps into that pack and kind of pushes some other guys down. I haven't heard of anybody else yet that might do that. He's the guy that I think as of right now we can then some outside looking at that. 10, Carter Bryant, Kasparas at 11, Derek Queen at 12. And I've seen a lot of you guys be like, I really like Derek Queen. I really like the idea of Derek Queen. He is not my Huckleberry. He's fun. He would probably be really good in a world that basketball is being played in 2007. Like, that's where you could get away with this. You could still go more too big. He's productive. And, like, that's the thing. It's like, he kind of falls in the category, they're not the same player, but the same kind of player as Domantas Sabonis. Insanely productive, and production matters. Like, it'll get you paid. Like, he's going to rebound. He's going to find a way to score. I don't know if he can play the 5 in the NBA, and I don't know if he can defend 4s. We don't get many tweeners anymore. And he feels like a 4-5 tweener that's more 5 than 4. It's like Asa Newell. Asa Newell is probably more 4 than 5 with like who he can guard, but he's more 5 than 4 offensively because the shooting's still kind of a question mark. But I think teams might look at Asa and go, but if he can shoot it, and I think you could say the same for Queen if he can stretch it out, but if you're playing Queen at the 5, yes, he can rebound, but your rim protection is going to suffer, much like Sabonis. So, and we saw the two big lineup in Indiana, a team that has built a hell of a roster, go, this isn't going to work. We need to go a different way. And it doesn't mean they're not good players. It just means you're kind of pigeonholed a little bit more with how you build out the rest of your roster, and there's restrictions that kind of come with that. So, I like Queen, and maybe 12's fine. But I think overall my feel on Queen is I like him, but. And those questions that come up. Egor at 13. Behringer at 14. That's the Spurs. Go for it. Like, Behringer's probably the best shot blocker in the draft. 6'11" barefoot, almost a 7'5" wingspan. Adding another huge dude. He's very similar built, and the ESPN has this. Jaren Jackson, Miles Turner. Just a big dude. I could see teams kind of going for that. I get that. Colin Murray Boyles. I've seen some Blazers fans, and again in my mentions, who were like, I like CMB. Here's my CMB thing. Well, everybody wants to be like, he's Draymond. There's no other Draymond. There's just not. Like, there's a reason why Draymond was so special. Elite rim protector, massive disruptor, maybe the best switch defender we've ever seen. Captain of your defense, plus playmaker. Somehow manages to find a way to shoot when you least expect it, even though he's not reliable as a shooter. But, like, you're talking about a tweener build where he's 6'6" barefoot in Colin Murray Boyles, which is very similar to Dre. Strong as an ox. He's got this feel, but I don't know if he can score outside of 5 feet. I don't know if he's anywhere close to the class of defender or have the basketball IQ or feel of Draymond Green. I know opinions vary on Draymond. Draymond Green in his prime, I would have murdered to have on the Blazers. Like, even with all of the asshattery that he consistently finds himself in, that guy is a basketball savant, particularly on the defensive end, and on the offensive end as a playmaker. It's just not, it's hard to replicate. And anytime you talk about a guy who's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, which Draymond is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, I'm always leery of comparing a guy who might go somewhere between 10 and 15 to that guy. And yes, I'm aware Draymond Green was picked in the second round of the draft, all those things. But, like, chasing that dragon, I don't know, man. Look, if it hits, he could be very good. He could be very, very, very good. And a team like the Rockets, I could see them taking CMB at 15 because they're looking at moving one of Tari or Jabari or one of everyone not named Amen Thompson to get maybe more veteran experience. And you're slotting this guy in as a replacement for those guys. I could see that happening. And I think that's kind of I would be surprised if he went higher than 10. But I think that's where his range starts. I'm only going to hit like the first 20 here. Jace Richardson at 16. Look, I got to talk to Jace at his media availability. That kid is sharp. He is bright, but he's also this much taller than me. Like, in shoes, we were eye to eye. He measured barefoot 6 foot. I'm 5'10 plus. I think I'm 5'10 and a half or a quarter. What is it? 70 and a half inches. I got measured by the Air Force 1,000 times. 70 and a half inches. So I'm 5'10 and a half. In shoes, I'm around 6 foot. Okay. He's just tiny. And that is such a, like, you have to be so freaking good at that size. It's just almost impossible to overcome. And when I asked him, I go, look, one of the critical things that's going to come up and you're going to be asked about is your size. Like, who were the guys in the league that you watch that you're like, these are the smaller guys in the league that have had successful careers that I'm going to borrow from? And I loved his answer, Mike Conley. I was like, oh, you're smart. Whether that's him, his agent, whatever. It's a smart answer because Mike Conley has made a career as a 6'1" undersized guard by being a defensive demon, an incredibly fast thinker, and being in the right places at all the right times, but also being a blur on the floor for his first 10 years in the league. I don't think Jace is that quick twitchy. Now, he has some of that, and I don't know if he can be a point guard. Now, he did toggle on to kind of be a point guard later in the season for Israel Michigan State. So if that gives you at least a little bit of hope, but 6 foot guards, man, it's not my huckleberry. Again, not the path I want to go down. Thomas Sorber, unfortunately, picked up a foot surgery in February, so we didn't get to see a ton of him. What I have watched of him, I think he's, and again, this kind of goes into the Derek Queen bucket. He's 6'9" barefoot, so he's a little bit undersized in that regard. And without getting a ton of work behind him, it was kind of hard to evaluate him. Now, he's a truck of a human being, measured in at 260. You ain't moving that big boy. There's some Isaiah Stewart to him. Long arms, big, strong dude. Like, I think he's a guy, because of his size and his wingspan, you could maybe talk me into him being a starting center in the league. He just is more centery in that sense than Queen feels to me. I could be wrong, but at least my opinion, that's a guy. Asa Newell at 18, I think if Asa falls to 18, you've got to steal. From what I understand, I don't think he's going to get out of the lottery. Asa's a great kid. The thing he has going against him is he's got T-Rex arms for a guy that big. Measured in 6'9" barefoot, 6'11" wingspan. That's the thing he has fighting against him outside of his inability to be productive as a shooter. Great athlete, great cutter, feel, knows how to do it already. Mobility, rebounding. Like, if you're looking at the plus side of, like, if you're thinking, can Asa turn into a shooter? Shot 75% on free throws this year. Not great, but also if, like, you're 6'9" plus and you're 75% or better, it's at least a positive indicator that you've got some touch and some feel as a shooter. You all right, Weezy? It's okay, Bubba. Will Riley at 19, too rich for my blood, but I understand why somebody would go down that path. 6'8", ball handler, tweener, wing guard type. Weighed in at $185. He's skinny. But if you're a team like the Nets, who has 11 billion picks, you could go down that path. And then 20, Liam McNeely. McNeely got a green room invite. There are multiple teams that really like him. He was a guy coming into this class who I was like, 6'6" guy who can shoot the hell out of the ball at UConn. Had some injuries. I think he'll be able to shoot it. I think he had a bit of a down season at UConn, but that's why he's going to fall. But I think he's going to be a first-round guy, and there's some potential that he's 15 to 20 range. So that's kind of where I fall, at least for those top 20 guys. There's probably other guys up and down the board that I'm either higher or lower on, but that's ultimately where this stuff kind of ends up. So good question, though. It was fun actually kind of going through that. Jeff Forstead asked, do you believe there's a chance they will look to package deal and move up in this draft? I just don't know if players available around our pick make a ton of sense right now. What player from 6 through 10, let's pull up the ESPN draft, makes a ton of sense right now? And don't say Ace Bailey. Because moving up to 6 is going to cost you an arm and a leg. So Ace, Fears, Malawach, Essengue, or Carter Bryant at 10. If you want to move up one spot, okay. Shouldn't cost you an arm and a leg. In fact, pull up Kevin Pelton's draft model. I'm sorry, no, I want his draft points. All right, come on. Where did it go? I used to have this saved on the trade chart. All right, so Pelton, I think, originally did this in 2018. And it'll vary depending on the draft. But the way this works is pick 1 worth 3,500 points, pick 60 worth 210. So that's your slotting based on the curve of the draft. So the difference between pick 9 and pick 10. Pick 9 is 2,050 points. Pick 10 is 2,000. It's one of the closer ranges, and it drops from 2,000 to 1,850 from 10 to 11. This is based on historical averages. So this can vary kind of in between in that point. It shouldn't cost you a ton, but it also depends on what the market is. And we just saw Desmond Bain, again, being traded for 4 firsts and a swap, and that's a lot. And that might make some other GMs like, well, we need to make sure we, get our pound of flesh, and the valuations on things might change. And that's why you can't always use this. But you're talking about like probably a second to move up and get it. Now, it probably costs a little more than that. Maybe it's a second and a guy off the back of your roster, or something to wet somebody's whistle. But moving up 1 shouldn't be that bad. But with that being said, I don't think that the Blazers are moving up as it stands today. I don't think there's anybody that, like, I'm sure look, if you can move up and get Cooper Flagg, sure, but what's it going to cost you? And I think you have to add the value proposition of that is probably a lot. So no, I don't think they're going to move up. Adam asks, Adam Antium, I just want to hear the process direction GM Marang takes if you're suddenly gifted or cursed with the keys to the organization. What do you do the next year or so starting with this draft? I think without knowing what discussions have taken place, leading up to the draft, I think you're looking at some version of, I probably split difference between a lot of you guys who are like, give the kids the keys and run it back. I'd probably look to move a veteran or two if I could get neutral or even slightly positive value without impacting my financial stability going forward, which is, it's a lot tighter needle than I think people are willing to admit to thread. In this draft, I would try to get one of KJ or Bryant, I think, in that range. A lot of it depends on what happens at picks 3, 4, 5, 6, really. And what teams look to move and maneuver. Can you peel something off from somebody here? The one I've often said is if suddenly Giannis asks out the day before the draft, and like Houston is the team that I've long said, I think they'd be in the driver's seat. Then they rope in either one of New Orleans or Portland because they hold Milwaukee's draft future. I would look at doing something along the lines of, what do I like more? Do I like Tari Eason or Jabari Smith Jr. more than I would like Carter Bryant or Kasparas Jakucionis? Or can I do both? Or, hey, now Houston, you've got Giannis and you're looking to, be more aggressive. Or like, does one of the veterans here make sense for you? Or does one of our young guys to Milwaukee make more sense? And instead of sending player X, whether it be Tari or Jabari, to Milwaukee, what if we gave you one of our young guys and then you draft along those lines? I think that's probably the position I would take. And I've said this a million times. I don't just like Joe because he's nice to me, because Neil was an ass to me. I like Joe because his general thought process and vision for the team is pretty in line. And you can go back and listen to the hundreds of podcasts that I did when Neil was in charge. They had the smallest, least athletic team in the NBA. I want a big, strong, long, athletic team. Period, point blank. Like that's just the way that I want to build. I've said that for years. And if I go down in flames like that, that's fine. But you look at a guy like KJ as a 6'6" point guard. You look at a guy like Carter Bryant, 6'7" wing, very athletic, very explosive. You look at a guy like Jabari Smith Jr. that can toggle between power forward and center. Hell, he can play some small forward even. 6'10", plus defender. Tari Eason's a complete, absolute lunatic defensively that has some upside in his offensive game still. Like those are the kind of guys that I like. I remember we go back to that draft. I've said it before. I wrongly, I had Jabari Smith Jr. as number 1 on my board over Paolo and Chet. My thought process was, and this is why I've probably evaluated some of the things that I've done over the last couple of years a little bit differently. I was more bullish on Jabari being a creator off the bounce. Like, and here's what scares me about Ace Bailey. I think Jabari Smith Jr. probably had a better handle and a more consistent way to get into his shots than Ace Bailey does, and Ace is a 2 or a 3, where Jabari was always going to be a 4 or 5. So those are at least, I think, the tent poles of kind of what I would go down. The whole like, well, I would trade this for this and this for this and this for this. Like, yeah, sure, I wish I could snap my fingers and do that. Like I've seen the suggested trades for like Jeremy to the Lakers. I don't know if I want to take on Jared Vanderbilt's money. Not with what the cap position the Blazers are in and the ability, like I know everybody says cap position and it's like, oh, well, the Blazers don't get free agents. No, but you can do a lot more when you can facilitate some deals if you got some room. And if you're doing that because you want Rui, and I just don't, I have a very hard time believing the Blazers could peel that 2031 first out of the Lakers. Now, if you could, great. You could, but I don't think that's happening. So, like, the individual moves, that part of it is tough. Connor Scott, is there a focus on playmaking this draft? ESPN has Egor Demin and Kasparas Jakucionis mocked the Blazers for a long time. Given Mike Schmidt's connection to ESPN, I feel like the draft predictions for the Blazers are incredibly accurate. They've been pretty accurate, but also Gavoni and Wu get intel from basically everyone, and they've been nails. I think they had 18 of the first 20 last year or something like that. It was like, damn. And the year before that, it was like 17 of the first 19. Like they're connected quite well. So that's part of the info broker game is, hey, look, I know this team's looking at this guy. What are you guys looking at? Like that's where that all comes from. And I'm not saying that is a bad thing. That's just part of the game. But I do feel like the Blazers are prioritizing playmaking because what are the two most critical things that they're lacking? Consistent playmaking up and down the roster and shooting. Like they've got some advantage creators with Denny and Ant, and I think you could probably squint and say that with Scoot and Shaden to an extent. What they do with it from there is still hit or miss, but like you can see what you're looking for at least. But outside of those guys, like Two's still trying to find his groove offensively, and I still think there's room. I think when it's all said and done, Two could be a 16, 17 a game scorer. But like, how far does this go? T Darkstar. Shout out Darkstar, the OG. Let's pretend the Blazers make an offer which a team can't refuse, as Orlando did for Bane. What kind of player should Portland go for, and is that the right move at this point or not? I'm going to work from the back forward. I don't think that they know what their team is going to be yet, and I think that's what this season is going to be about. I'm very interested to see, coming out of camp and going into preseason, is this a team where the Blazers look at Denny and the way he closed the season, and I always have like a squint on anything like post All-Star game, but Denny was so good that even if you dial that back, is there a world that exists where Denny's a 20-point 8 rebound, 5 assist guy? Yeah, which is kind of crazy. Like I think even the Blazers are kind of shocked by, like they thought he was going to have more upside. That's why they made the move. But I think they, through this process, like, oh, there's more here. And now it becomes like, okay, if this is a Denny-centric team, how much of Denny? You know, like if you're moving the sliders, I don't think the usage rate he had in the final, couple games that he played is necessarily where they're going to be, where he's putting up 30 a game. But can you get him at like a 23 to 26% usage rate where you're up there higher? the thing about that is that he plays so physical, and you kind of have to worry about that. Like, does he wear down? Does he get banged up? Because I've seen that guy after games, man. He is beat to hell, but he's also beat the opponent to hell. And that just kind of wears on guys. So, how much more of a load can 2 take? Can Scoot toggle up? Can Shaden be more reliable? Can Donovan transition into a starting role? Like, all of those things, like, I think the Blazers probably look at all those things and, like, they have good data, but they're not. I think they believe in Scoot. I think they believe in Shaden. I think they believe in Ant. I think they believe in 2. I think they believe in Denny and Donovan. Like, I don't think there's really anybody on the roster that's inked long term that, like, no, this guy isn't going to be a good player. Just how good and how does it all fit together best? And I think after this year going into the summer, or the earlier question about making a bigger trade at the deadline, if things kind of accelerate. And then you go and find out, like, Orlando did this for 3 years before they finally went, boop. Like, that's why you go get Desmond Bane. They comb the market and they go, okay, who's a bigger, stronger guard, who's a plus defender, who's a legit shooter, not an okay shooter, a legit shooter. Like, Desmond Bane's a 40% three-point shooter on volume, like on catch and shoots, on movement, off the bounce. Like, he's a dyed-in-the-wool shooter. He can also score incredibly well from the mid-range. I think he's like a 46%. Let me pull it up real quick. I think when I looked at this the other day, I think he was a 46% mid-range shooter for his career. For those wondering, I'm using Cleaning the Glass for this real quick. If I can get logged, for the love of Pete. Okay. There we go. Finally worked. Click on it 11 billions times. All right. Let's pull up Desmond Bane here real quick. I did all this just to pull up Desmond Bane. Why did I do this? Nothing like doing this live. All right. So, points per shot attempt. In his career, the lowest Desmond Bane has ranked is in the 76th percentile. Efficient. Okay. Shooting frequency. His effective field goal percentage is actually, last year was his lowest, but it bounced back and forth between being a combo guard or a wing. He's never been below 55.5% effective field goal percentage. Last year was a bit of a drop from rim shooting as far as percent of his shots, a little more than a quarter of his shots, which was league average. In the mid-range, 34% of his shots came from the mid-range, 84th percentile. 39% of his shots came from 3, 29th percentile. Okay. Now, if you look at accuracy, so he shot 45% from mid-range in the 71st percentile. So plus shooter on volume from mid-range as he stands among the league, while also being a 40% three-point shooter and a above average rim finisher. Rim finishing last 2 years, 68%. So size, strength, defense, shooting and scoring at all 3 levels at an incredibly efficient clip. Decent enough contract, like, it marked all the boxes. There's probably 2 or 3 guys in the league that went, yes. And they had to put a package together where Memphis was like, yeah, can't say no to that. So I think it's very hard to identify that. And there's a question in here that somebody else asked that I did some more research on because I wanted to dive into it that kind of addresses that exact same thing. So, Darkstar, I think that's not right now, and like if you're asking me who that guy would be, it's probably a wing, and I just don't know who kind of fits into that, who can toggle on and off. Now you could be like, well, Jaylen Brown. I'm like, well, yeah, I can see that. Like if you throw him in there, cool, but I that's probably a little too far out there. Rob Severs asks, which regional trade prospect would you like the Blazers to trade for? Not pie in the sky, break the game guys, but players who would be a good fit here. Probably 2 guys that I already mentioned: Jabari Smith Jr., Tari Eason. Like at some point in time, Houston's going to have to move somebody because they have a glut of young wings. But I did this exercise. I went to Basketball Reference, StatHead, NBA.com. Genius IQ, which is the old Second Spectrum. Hey, stop doing that stupid camera thing. You can see my gate now. Cool. And I started sorting out. I did this before with Denny, and I was like, okay, how many players are truly like this? go ahead and move that back up. Yep. You can see that I'm packing in the back. Enjoy that. And the number of players that kind of fit that Denny profile, it gets super small really quick. And I was like, God, is it really is it that small? So let's do a little exercise. Since we've already done some typing on the stream, I'll do another one here. Okay. I'm going to just use NBA.com as just a basic filter for this. And we'll just go on this last season. And the first filter I'm going to put in this is age. I'm going to go 24 years old or younger. Okay. Let me click the right thing there. 24 years or younger. If I sort by, let's put one more on there. Let's just go players that are under 24 or younger and got you, what's a fair number? 15? Let's go 14. I like 14. 14 points per game. So these are the players under the age of 24 who averaged 14 or less. Or it's got, at least 14. Or, God, I clicked the wrong one. There we go. Wrong way. 14 or more. Ant Edwards, Tyrese Maxey, Cade Cunningham, Paolo Banchero, LaMelo Ball, Zion, Wemby, Franz, Cam Thomas, Jalen Williams, Trey Murphy, Brandon Miller, Jalen Green, Scotty Barnes, Alperen Şengün, Jalen Johnson, Shaedon Sharpe, Evan Mobley, Jaden Ivey, Denny, Keontae George, Devin Vassell, Jalen Suggs, Ben Mathurin, Christian Brown, Jared McCain, Jonathan Kuminga, Mark Williams, Chet Holmgren, Steph Castle, Josh Giddey, Grady Dick, Dyson Daniels, Trey Mann, Amen Thompson, Tolu Smith, who shouldn't be on here because he only played one game. Who on that list is gettable? Ant, no. Maxey, no. Cade, no. Paolo, no. LaMelo, yes. Zion, possibly, but considering the allegations against him, probably want to stay away from that now. Franz, no. Cam Thomas, yes. Jalen, no. Trey, got to cost you an arm and a leg. Miller, no. Jalen Green, you've got Jalen Green at home, but better. Scotty Barnes, no. Alpy, but you've got a glut of centers. Jalen Johnson, hell no. Evan Mobley, hell no. Jaden Ivey. Keontae George, Vassell, Suggs, hell no. Ben Mathurin, Jared McCain, no. Kuminga, please God, no. I don't want it. No. Mark Williams, no. Chet, no. Steph, no. Giddey, no. Grady Dick, Dyson, no. Trey Mann, no. Amen, no. Like that, it's just not there. When you're talking about, okay, who's a guy that's got a little bit of a role, that's showing some stuff, and really, really could pop. And I think you have to go kind of a step lower, and that's why I think you look at guys like Tari and Jabari. So those are the guys mostly that I target in that range. And I think probably a guy like Tari a little bit more because Jabari's more 4-5 where Tari's more 3-4. And I think that's probably the spot that you're looking at more than anything else. Because I think if you're optimizing guys, you're putting 2 at the 2 and Denny at the 4 in order for them to be really be maximized. So, yeah, like I said, I did this exercise before and I was like, that's tough. That's a tough place to go. And if you do, like, let's say Trey Murphy, a lot of you guys in the chat have brought up, Trey's going to cost you a ton. Like, you better be sure he's the guy. I'm not saying you're wrong. I honestly, on this list, Trey and Miller are probably 2 of the guys where I'm like, yeah, but I don't think you're getting either of those guys without it being pretty pricey. So that's where I'm at with that. All right. Here's the question that I did some research on because I wondered. At Gen X Trailblazer, Chris, who would be your ideal target in an Ant trade that could replace his shooting and playmaking with perhaps higher upside and also fits the timeline? So, plus shooting, additional creation, higher upside, and fits the timeline. Whole buddy. Okay. So, for this little exercise, I grabbed players 25 or younger. This is just last year. So what I did is I took Ant's last 3 seasons combined to get kind of an average of where Ant has been. Ant averaged 20.7 points, 4.7 assists, 2.9 rebounds, shot 43% from the field, 37% from three, 90% from the free throw line. True shooting percentage of 57%. Okay, those are the numbers, right? So what I did was I go, okay, let's hop over to old StatHead and see if what we can find. Let's find a player that has hit that threshold in any season since 2017-18. This is where it gets super interesting. There are 11 total players who have hit that threshold. 20 points per game, attempting 8 or more threes, shooting 37% from three, under 25 or under. Those players are, drumroll please, Luka Doncic, Trae Young, Ant Edwards, Maxey, Tyler Herro, Donovan Mitchell, Zach LaVine, Trae Young again, Desmond Bade, Anthony Simons, and Jordan Poole. That's the list. This is what I've been saying about Ant, and I'm sure everybody has their things that they say. The threshold that Ant is at, there aren't that many guys that can do that. And every time I hear somebody from Orlando, some Orlando Magic fan in my mentions, or somebody in the comments like Ant's this or Ant's that, I'm like, there's like 15 guys in the league that can do what he does that aren't otherworldly superstars over the last 5 years. Like, that's just, is he good enough to be an all-star? No. But like the idea of replacing him and that it's so easy if you just go do this, it's not. That's the thing about this. Like, and I think that's why the Trailblazers in general just haven't moved him. Because if it was so easy to go get a guy that could get you 20 on high three-point efficiency while having some creation and being young and having upside, they'd probably go do it. But you can't, because every single one of these guys on this list, save Bane, Simons, and Poole, have been an all-star. Like, that's just the deal. It's not this thing that's easily replicable or replaceable. And I've seen some people, well, if they trade Ant, they can make more room for Scoot. And I'm like, look, I think Scoot is actually going to be able to shoot it relatively well. I don't know if he's ever going to be a high-level scorer. Like, I don't know if Scoot's going to be a 20-a-game scorer. I think he might be more like of a 18-a-game scorer with more playmaking. No, don't get me wrong. Scoot's a significantly better creator, floor general type. Like, and that's not to be disregarded. But I don't know if he's ever taking 8 threes a game. So if you're a team that's incredibly light on shooting and you're trading away Anthony Simons, you better damn well go get some dudes who can shoot the living shit out of the ball. So that's probably why I was like, yeah. So, but I did find it interesting because I wasn't really sure. I was like, I wonder where Ant falls in all of this. It's a murky area, but it's also one that's, for anytime anybody says, well, you can go do this. Well, that's why those teams that don't have those guys, that's why Orlando's been stuck. You can see the same thing, honestly, with Cleveland and them trying to find a forward. It's a very difficult needle to thread. That's the second time I've said that. When you're looking for something very specific to replace. So that's my spiel on not necessarily Ant, but just like guys when you're trying to find something like a very specific skill set to try and replace. There's only like when you talk about scarcity of assets, like, and when I say scarcity of assets, I'm like the skills, scarcity of skill. The reason I always lean towards like my draft evaluation in general, like boiling it down to simple things. If all things are equal, give me the bigger guy, because you can't coach size, you can't coach speed, you can't coach that stuff. But if you're looking for a particular skill, whether it's playmaking, okay, if it's playmaking with size, shooting with size, like those are the things that I prioritize. And I think when you kind of go down that, and the bigger you get as a player, the more unlikely it is. And that's why a guy like Danny and even to an extent is so valuable, because Denny is 6'9", 245 pounds, and he can dribble, pass, shoot, and has a metric crap ton of rim pressure. And the fact that his shooting has stepped up significantly above the break, all of a sudden that opens everything up and becomes like, if let's just throw this out there, and hell, I'll run this right now. Let's go StatHead, basketball, season finder. I'm going to do this since all positions since, let's go modern era. So let's go 2015-16. All positions, and I'm just going to throw this in there like a per game deal. And on biographical filters, I'm going to put it from, I'll be nice and I'll go 6'8" or taller. Okay? And then on the statistical filters, we're going to go points per game. We're going to put that at 20. Okay? We're giving Denny a bump here. Just like if it happened, right? Let's go total rebounds. We'll give him 8. We're not going to go full 20 and 10. And then we're going to go assists per game at 5. Okay? Okay. Without any efficiency standards. No true shooting, no effective field goal percentage, no field goal percentage, no free throw, no threes, no nothing. 20 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, 6'8" or taller. Since, at any position, since 2015-16. Okay. Let's sort here. There are 29 total entries. These are the players that have done it. Giannis, DeMarcus Cousins, Kevin Durant, Joel Embiid, LeBron James, Nikola Jokic, Julius Randle, Domantas Sabonis, Alperen Şengün, Pascal Siakam, Jason Tatum. That is the entire list. Scarcity with size. So that's ultimately where I fall with this stuff. All right, let's bang through a bunch of these because we're going to be going for an hour plus. Rip City asks, what players on the team are currently still in town? The Blazers have held a couple mini camps, and basically everyone, I think, save Denny because he's been training with the Israeli team for FIBA. And I think he's supposed to be back sometime after the draft, but basically everyone's been in town at some point in time when they're running fives or doing court work or whatever. I don't think everybody's participated in like fives, but basically everyone's been in town. When I've been in for media stuff, Scoot was in there, Chris was in there, Manaya was in there, Bari was in there, I think DA was in there once. Like most of the roster has been through. So I think damn near everyone's been in town. Now, guys will get out and go take their vacations and go do things and stuff like that. But pretty much everybody's been in town. Jeff Workman asks, if Grant is still on the roster at the start of next season, is he a starter? That's a good question. I would go with yes because Chauncey's the head coach, and I think the way that they viewed how Jeremy was playing defensively December, January, February, he was a big part of that. And people are going to feel the way they feel about Jeremy. And his shooting suffered, and I think that was more of a change in system than him getting snatched by Father Time. But it all could also be Father Time. And if that's the case, that's tough. But I think the Blazers going very analytical and going very much rimmer three and eliminating most of their mid-range. Like if you look at it, Cleaning the Glass has it. Actually, I can do that right now. If I go league context on shooting, I believe the Blazers had the number 1 location effective field goal percentage in the entire NBA. No, they finished tied for first with Chicago. So that means based on the shots that they took, if they shot league average, they would have had the highest effective field goal percentage in the league. So modeling-wise, they were trying to get the highest value proposition possible via frequency. The problem was, if you on the other side of that, they were ranked 25th out of 30 at the rim and 26th in the league in three from a shooting percentage, not accuracy, not frequency. So even though they were taking those shots, they weren't making them, and they were 28th in the league in mid-range percentage. The only spot that they shown above average, they were 5th in long middies. So they were a good long mid-range team, but they didn't really take them. So This is all getting back to Jeremy. If he's on the roster, I do think he would start. I think you're probably looking at Ant, 2, Denny, Jeremy, DA, as it stands right now. I think that would be your starting lineup with Scoot, Sharp, Donovan as your 6th, 7th, 8th men. With probably, Tease sliding in. That's probably Tease, Chris, some version of that, like on any given night. I think that's probably what you're looking at. Roy Green asks, do you think that next year Portland will give Danny and 2 the opportunity to lead the team, or do they see him as role players? I think 2 is going to be given the reins as kind of a defensive captain in a sense. Like, I think that they're going to lean into that, but I think the whole team is going into it. But I do have a pretty strong feeling that they're going to test the limits with Denny, and can he, go, hey, can you be a number 1? And if you're not a number 1, can you be a kick-ass number 2? And if it's not a kick-ass number 2, it's a holy crap number 3. I think they're going to test that out. And I think that's what next year is about, is what guys can handle what roles the most, and kind of maybe even push the limits on what they can handle, and then see where they go from there. So, but yeah, I'm optimistic that they're going to give Denny a very big chance at the lion's share of offensive initiation and usage. Texas Blazer asks, what the Blazers value more in this draft, playmaking or 3-point shooting? Both. They need both, and you want a player that can do both, which is where Kasparas kind of pops for me. He's a playmaker, and I think he'll be able to shoot the ball very well. I think last year was more of an issue with consistency and injuries and confidence than it was that he can't shoot. But again, that might be my bias talking. Is there going to be a draft party for the first round? Yes. I don't know if it'll be with me here or if it'll be on location. Still trying to figure out if that's happening. But one way or the other, something will be going on. Because it's a 2-night event, I haven't talked to the Blazers yet. The way they've done it recently is they do the press conference after the first round, and the Blazers don't currently hold a second-round pick. So I would imagine there's a press conference that night. So as soon as the draft is over, I'm going and heading over to the practice facility wherever I'm at for press availability. So, but yeah, there will be stream, whether it's here, on location somewhere else, there will be something, right? CJS, any chance we let all expiring contracts run out and we have cap space next offseason? I don't think all. I don't think they're going to let all of them run out, but there's a world where they could let them run out and use it to help facilitate other deals. And that kind of feeds back into the other question earlier about next year and the Blazers taking a next step. If they have space to absorb somebody, let's say another team is in contention and they're like, oh crap, we are going to get hammered with luxury tax and second apron punishments and all these different things. We have to let this really good player go, but we can't take back a bunch of money. Well, you could do a lopsided trade if they let that run out. And I think that's why the Blazers will probably try to prioritize not taking back toxic money if they do move an expiring, unless it's for a player that has genuine upside or picks that are just too good to pass up. So, yeah, I think there's a chance that a contract is let run out. I think that there's a possibility for that. Casey Park asks, from most likely, not likely rank, what do you think the Blazers do? Move up, move back, stay put, or totally trade out? Move up, I think, is the second least likely. Trade out entirely. Don't make a pick, but trade for a player. Move up's the most unlikely. Move back is the second most least likely. Trade out for a player, closer to likely, and I think staying put is their most likely option today. Was June 17th, Tuesday. I think that's right. So, a lot of these are repeats. Any chance Ace slides to 11? I don't think he's fallen that far. In this draft, for the Blazers, who are your realistic wants, don't wants, dark horse, most likely? Realistic one, I've kind of went over this. I think Bryant or Kasparas. Don't want. I'm not a Queen guy. Love the band though. Big Freddie Mercury man. Experiment with stuff. Dark horse. That's a good question. Like, so the green room invites have gone out. Not all of them. There's still a no more list, but there was a group of guys: Jace Richardson, Cedric Coward, Neat Clifford, somebody else. I was looking at. I was like, they haven't gotten one yet. And again, I don't think they would necessarily go there, but a guy that I love is Neat Clifford. 11's too rich for him. He's just too rich. But I love Neek. I really do. I think he has the potential to be like a bigger, better shooting, better ball handling Josh Hart, which is an insane thing to say about a player because I think Josh is a really, really, really good player, despite how different of a player as he is. I think Neek is going to be one of the best rebounding guard wing types in the league. So that's a guy that I would love. I think the most likely actually kind of lines up with my realistic want. That's usually what ends up happening. I usually kind of talk myself into like, okay, yeah, no, this guy here is somebody I could get behind. I even had my questions about Donovan. Like he ended up being better defensively than I thought and worse offensively than I thought. So, that's part of that whole process. So there's a couple other questions in here that just kind of repeats of the other. But thank you guys all for the questions. An hour and 20 minutes. Sorry it's been so long. Like I said, life has been life. I'm going to get off this. I'm going to go work on the last little bit of my mock because I'm going to tweak a few things that I had in there from yesterday. Just after some intel calls, I want to kind of move a few things around, nothing crazy. I'll probably push that out tonight or tomorrow. And then I'll have some draft previews. I'll have some write-ups on the guys that I've talked about, most particularly with KJ, Bryant, Egor, who am I missing? Essengue. I have one other one going. God, my brain is mush. But those will all be out before the draft. So, and then I've got the Denny piece too that's done. Then I'll probably just click publish on. Want to tear it up immediately because I have another way that I want to go with that already. So, but thank you all for being here. Like, rate, review, subscribe, do all of the things. Have a wonderful, wonderful night. Take care. Shout out. Marshawn Lynch, take care of your chickens and your mentals, y'all. I'll catch y'all soon. We're going to do at least one more of these before the draft, and then we'll have a live draft show. Again, like, rate, review, subscribe, do all the things. Patreon.com/Jacked Ramsays for the Patreon, and I will catch you guys on the next one.